The Azurite Temple is, in essence, a 7-month coaching container. Essentially, it is a 7-month coaching workshop, a 7-month coaching retreat, an online retreat. I'm linking everything that's happening within the body to a structure that is our universal time matrix. Herein comes the teachings of the law of one. Much like the illusion of physicality, there would be definitely a perception that their separation exists. We're bridging the dissonance that we have with regards to the theories of how our reality works. So some of our sessions will be cognitive-based sessions, but other parts of the sessions will be what we call meditations and activations. We are inevitably activating the DNA. What is quantum? We said quantum is energy. Quantum is microcosm and macrocosm. What is energy? It's information. That information is passing through the dimensional layers of your Kathara grid. Okay, so your Kathara grid speaks to your original organic Christic blueprint of how the universe is structured. So bringing this information down and working through it in bite-sized chunks so that I don't overwhelm you, so I'm not using this big spiritual jargon, so that it is accessible to all, no matter what level you are at within your spirituality.
Greetings, seekers of ancient wisdom, and we're back again. Episode 4 of the Azurite Temple Series with Brigitte Heeb, our experienced shaman. Brigitte, welcome again.
Thank you, Deepak.
Brigitte, so it's freezing cold here in Johannesburg. That's why I've got this little beanie on. Otherwise, I would be shivering nonstop. But today we're talking about the Azurite Temple, which is the name of our series. So let's start off with a question. What is the Azurite Temple?
The Azurite Temple is, in essence, a 7-month coaching container. So container is a word that I've noticed that is used around spiritual community, and I don't want that word to kind of confuse people. Essentially, it is a 7-month coaching workshop, a 7-month coaching retreat, an online retreat. The reason we have that word container in there is because it is a contained, multidimensional grid and field that is created for this workshop to occur or for this training to occur. So I guess there's a couple of like marketing buzzwords that I'm using in terms of what is the Azurite Temple. So obviously we know Azurite Temple is a beautiful name. So we use those names to market. But that name is really an anchoring of a frequency. And we'll go further into that further in the show. It's an anchoring of a frequency, the Azurite Temple. The 7-month coaching container meaning it's a safe space that is multidimensionally gridded for the 7-month period for us to work in integrity and flow. And then the marketing buzzwords are, what is it that we're going to do in there? It's a quantum embodiment training workshop.
So let's start with that because I don't even know what that means to be fully fair and truthful. So what is quantum embodiment? What does that mean?
So I think, we break it down to the first word, quantum. What is quantum? And I think to me at the moment, it's such a big focus in my reality. And let me ask you, when I say the word quantum, what is it that you feel? What is it the first thing that jumps to me?
Well, I practice quantum resonance in my health practice. I'm familiar with the word, but what jumps to me is inside the atom. It's like the tiny, infinitesimal space that we struggle to perceive. And that's what I think of when I hear quantum. I think of electrons and protons and what's happening inside the atom.
Correct. So we're talking microcosm to macrocosm, macrocosm to microcosm. And herein comes the law of one. So when I think quantum, in actual fact, I'm thinking big. And I know that seems interesting because it is about the atomic structure. So essentially, but it's also everything. So it's everything linked. This is where the law of one comes in, where we're looking at everything from a microcosmic perspective to a macrocosmic perspective. We do this in the form of philosophical conversations around, ancient history, around the solar system, around our bodies. So here comes the word embodiment. So what are we embodying? Quantum technology, which again is not separate from the one. So I'm linking everything that's happening within the body to a structure that is our universal time matrix. So essentially, what quantum embodiment also can mean in this dialogue is that we're working with the DNA. We're working with the DNA. So, what is it that we are doing on our spiritual path? This is the question we have to answer, because if I say to you, we're working on the DNA, we're working at this microcosmic to macrocosmic structure, linking it all into the theory of one, you might be like, oh my gosh, what has this got to do with my spiritual enlightenment? What has this got to do with me being on the spiritual path? And how does it relate to assisting me, right? Essentially, if we're looking at everything from that microcosmic to macrocosmic perspective, what are we doing? We are coming to the understanding that everything is energy. And within that understanding, we're breaking down the teachings to understand that everything is a wave format, a scalar wave format, right? So much like the Terrence Howard interview that just got put out on Joe Rogan, he speaks to that. Everything is expanding and contracting in this wave. And that's all that quantum means in this reference is we have to understand that everything is energy. So I could say energy embodiment program, right? Or I could say scalar wave program, or I could say frequency embodiment training. But the reason I'm using the word quantum is it's because how my consciousness is perceiving my reality at this moment, and it is from a quantum space. But as I said to you, my feeling body, my cognitive body is really thinking of quantum as this big space, because which is interesting because I'm understanding it from the microcosm and I'm extrapolating it into the macro, and bringing the teachings throughout the whole in this wave format. So if we begin to understand this wave, we begin to understand cycles, we begin to understand that our cellular system and our DNA system is not separate from this wave creation model.
So this thing about everything being energy is something I've maybe understood for a while, because the scientists, they thought, okay, first let's see what the smallest particle is, and they found the atom, and they found that there's electrons floating around, and those are just negative charges but moving super fast. And then in the nucleus of the atom, they had the protons and neutrons or whatever. And then they got to look inside that, and they thought, okay, we're going to find some physical particles, but they found just more energy particles. So there's actually no physical thing. Even when you go into the nucleus of the atom, they call them quarks, and they just give names to these things, but they're just energy.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think this is where quantum string theory comes from, because if they break it down, there's just like these like floating strings kind of vibe, like it's like these filaments.
So that's that's where the wave theory and string theory and all these new age theories have come. But at the essence, there is no physical matter. It's just an illusion of physicality, but it's just actual energy that's just moving at different speeds that gives us that perception. So my question is, what What are we doing to our DNA in this Azurite program that that affects it at this quantum level?
Herein comes the teachings of the law of one, which I am in alignment to. And I think the law of one is such a grand gesture of a teaching, because much like the illusion of physicality, there would be definitely a perception that their separation exists, right? So we're bridging our dissonance. We're bridging the dissonance that we have with regards to the theories of how our reality works. How I do that in the course is, again, we move through sessions that are more cognitively based. So we have discussions, philosophical discussions about aspects around separation versus oneness, aspects around observing your shadow triggers, that which triggers you, and now moving to space of compassion to understand that that which triggers you, that which you identify as separate from you, that which possibly disgusts you, as part of you, right? So whether you get to the point of really feeling in resonance with the law of one or not, the processes that we move through are in fact part of shadow integration, where you may not get to the finish line of being like, oh yes, this is all one, but it's certainly going to challenge you to come to aspects of the vibration of love, the vibration of peace, the vibration of empathy, the vibration of compassion, in order to at least try and perceive the oneness that we are through this modeling, through this creation modeling, from micro to macro within the law of one. You asked, how does this course material affect the DNA? How are we actually working on the DNA? So when we're having these philosophical discussions in a more cognitive style teaching session, you're not really, it's not that you're not having it's not that it's not having an effect on your DNA, because everything is frequency. So even the information that I'm bringing in, even though it may be challenging to you, even though you may be in resistance to it, your system that is inevitably linked, every single particle to every atomic layer, to every single aspect of you, is receiving that information, even though it is a cognitive discussion. If you give someone a book, and let's say it's a book on quantum physics, and they've just started a book on the chakras, right? They're understanding the book on the chakras, and they start reading the book on quantum physics. We're reading it, but we're like, we can't see through the metaphors. We're not understanding it, but something in the higher aspects of your God avatar body is clicking in and recollecting that information. So even though you as human egoic identity may not be understanding the level of quantum physics, you may have you will have opportunity within the oneness to know that an aspect of that information is funneling through into your system. And the DNA is in recognition of this. So if we imagine the DNA as this little, being, this little child that's going, yes, I remember this. I want this information. Your ego mind doesn't yet understand it, but the DNA understands it. And this is where the part of the course becomes interesting, because I am not separate from the group of students. So this is also important to verbalize, that this is a co-creation. This is a co-creation space. I am facilitator as one that speaks to having attained certain levels of mastery. I facilitate this course. I anchor in the information, and then I sit and wait to receive and channel that which is required, right? So some of our sessions will be cognitive-based sessions, but other parts of the sessions will be what we call meditations and activations. And within those meditations and activations, along with the, verbal cognitive sessions, we are inevitably activating the DNA, because what am I doing? As a teacher, you go into a class to receive information on that which you wish to learn about, right? So it is information that you're not going to know about. And so I am downstepping the frequencies through verbal conversation around the subject matter that will be activating the DNA, as well as creating opportunity for meditations and activations.
Yeah, so I just want to understand. So you're basically saying because everything is energy, our DNA is also energy and can respond to frequencies. So information that we hear through our ears gets translated into energy, which our DNA can respond to, and that's sort of how it gets activated. On top of that, you have meditation classes and other sort of activation techniques that also send energy into our bodies and into the cellular level, and that's how the DNA is getting maybe upgraded or changed, activated. Yeah, I'm not sure of the right word.
So, I mean, we can go back to our beginning question of what is quantum. We said quantum is energy. Quantum is microcosm and macrocosm. What is energy? It's information, right? What is light? It's information. So that information is passing through the dimensional layers of your Kathara grid. Okay, so your Kathara grid speaks to your original organic Christic blueprint of how the universe is structured. And again, the universal structure of that 12 tree of life. So it's a 12 gridded tree of life called the Kathara grid. All right, not the Kabbalistic tree of life, not the Hermetic tree of life. This is the Kathara tree of life, an organic Christic blueprint. So let's say this blueprint is our universal blueprint. This gets translated down dimensional layers into the body, into the DNA. But what's happened historically over time is that this blueprint has been skewed. You know, let's say the blueprint is, let's say it's an ice cream cone with with a bunch of ice cream on it. Let's say that's the universal blueprint. That gets stepped down, and it's meant to be the blueprint in each of our cells and in the atomic layers. But through the distortion, so we spoke about this in our physiology of fear, the agenda of fear, the manipulation that occurs on our planet through frequency, which creates an emotion, which is also a frequency, which speaks to the cellular body, which activates hypo or hyperregulation within the body. So all of these systems are speaking to each other. And through this distortion, it means that the cells in the body are literally, for example's sake, with this example, just sitting with the cone and not the ice cream scoop. We are reclaiming the ice cream scoop onto the cone, right? We are reclaiming our original 12 dimensional grid tree of life within our universal structure, as well as within the DNA.
So when you started talking about the shape of things, I immediately thought of The Shape of Water, which is a book written by a researcher, a Japanese researcher. I forget his first name. His surname is Emoto. And he took the picture of water crystals. You might have come across this study. And the the amazing thing was he would take different samples of water and put different frequencies into them. So he would play music, different types of music. He would speak to them, or he would even write just on the water. He would write like different words like love, hate, and etc. And he took a picture of the water molecule, and the shape of the water molecule would actually change depending on what frequency this water was being bombarded with. Is this sort of what you're talking about when you are activating it? You're actually changing and returning the shape of the molecules into a more sacred geometric structure. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And that is a perfect example. That is what we are doing. And I'm so glad you brought up water because, through the agendas, how do you hit someone hard? You hit them where it hurts, right? You hit them with food, water, shelter, right? On the big scale, right? You may be into conspiracy theories or not, but if you were going to hit a population with a big agenda hard, you're going to hit them with food, water, housing. And that has already started, right? More so with our food. But when we have all of these, this intrusion into our soil system, it is inevitably mutating our water as well. And we are made up of that. We are made up of that. We're made up of all of the elements. So this is why quantum, that word quantum, is anchored into this workshop, because if we can understand that we are it all, we are earth, air, fire, water, ether, right? So this is the more shamanic aspect, but it's also the platonic solids. It's also quantum physics, So it's, yes, from the shamanic aspect, and then the quantum aspect, or the quantum physics aspect, and the water aspect is so beautiful because we can change the water. So I've had a conversation with one of my clients who was really freaking out about water issues in South Africa, where cholera was coming into the water systems, et cetera, et cetera. And I was like, look, if you were if you were squeezed into a space of predicament, urgency, and you had nothing available to you but prayer, right? But prayer. Your prayer and connection to God's source, and not prayer as a cognitive, verbal expression, as prayer as a frequency, because everything is frequency, prayer as a frequency, and can change that water. So we more than likely in the Azurite Temple will be doing big work around water as well, because the water represents the mother aspect. And so here we come into more of the terminology about why this course was created. And it's because myself, in my personalized consciousness, I am really beginning to look at aspects of creation around God energy. What is God, right? And when we look at this universal time matrix and we see it as these structures of divinity and mathematics and sacred geometry, and coding. So we can say, and this might upset people, but we can say God is a code, God is a pinprick, God is mathematical balance, God is an equation balancing itself out. God is a philosophy, God is kindness, God is frequency, God is love, right? It's all coming down to this quantum space of its frequency. So through this quest, personal quest in evaluating what is the God body, and we can refer to this as the dragon body or the whale body. And the reason we bring in these metaphors is because, when you perceive a whale or you perceive a dragon, you're imagining a giant body, so we call it the Buddha body as well. It's this giant, so we're working with chunks of information that are getting larger and larger and larger, but that we're also understanding from the microcosmic perspective that there is no separation, right? And through this quest to understand what God is, and through finding this information about Keylontic sciences, and it drives you into seeking the freedom teachings. So a lot of the basis of what I'm going to do is a mixture between that which I've learned on my shamanic, through my shamanic experience for 10 years, through a lot of trauma release understanding, through nervous system help or health, and then also moving into these more ancient doctrines of information that have been hidden from us called the freedom teachings, which come from the Melchizedek Cloister Emerald Order, right? So bringing this information down and working through it in bite-sized chunks so that I don't overwhelm you, so I'm not using this big spiritual jargon, so that it is accessible to all, no matter what level you are at within your spirituality. Because how does our spiritual path reflect back within our construct? It is through depression, anxiety, unease. It's through the basics. It's through our emotional body. So if I can speak to that emotional body without, trying to show off with regards to, oh, I've got access to this information from 950 billion years ago that history has hidden from us. Let's dive right in. It's amazing to dive in, but it's pretty complex teachings. The teachings are pretty complex. So this is where the meditations and activations come in, where I just get to guide you through a beautiful visual experience. And I know what I'm doing from the higher dimensional aspect, and I'm bringing through these frequencies, and it's speaking to your DNA, right? So you may be perceiving it as, wow, I went through this meditation. We traveled through the magical forest. I felt the energy of earth. I felt the trees, the elemental beings. But the frequencies that I'm bringing through from my understanding of having aligned and studied this material is far higher than what we can perceive. But so then we have this meditation in this beautiful visual guided space. But you're receiving blasts of real high frequency energy.
So you mentioned your friend in South Africa who was worried about the water, and then you told him that they could actually pray to change the water. Now, if you told me this a few years ago, I would have thought like, come on, Brigitte, this sounds absurd. But now that I've read Emoto's book, he actually did a specific experiment just like that. And he had some dam in Japan, and he took a sample of the water, and the water, he took a picture of the shape, and there was no shape at all. It was just a blob. And then he got a priest, a very famous priest in Japan, to pray over that water just for like 30 minutes. And it's a huge dam, right? It's not like a little glass of water. It's a dam. It's like, millions of liters. And this priest prayed for 30 minutes, obviously sending his frequency. And then Emoto took another sample of the water, and the water completely transformed into this beautiful, sacred geometric shape. It just looks so perfect. And that really was like a big penny drop in my mind. Like, wow, this is actually possible just by having that intent and sending it through your mind, through prayer, like you say, into water. And that can actually change the shape of a water molecule. I mean, it's so profound. Like if you take the water and just look at it with your eyes, the two samples would look exactly the same. But when you zoom into the atomic level, you see, yes, it's completely different. And you're saying this is what the Azurite Temple teachings are, is different frequencies that are getting given to us over a period of time that will actually change the shape and the geometric structure of the elements in our body. I know water, we start with water is obviously the big one because, we're 70% water, all our cells are water. There's water in the blood and everywhere. But I'm guessing that these frequencies will also change the shape of the air and the earth and the fire in our bodies. Am I understanding that correct?
Correct. And it does sound wild, it sounds wild. So, and this is multidimensionality, right? This is the excitement of being multidimensionally activated, because you begin to perceive other layers within your reality that you can work with. that are charged, that have energetic charge that you can, let's take like the movies, for example's sake. What is it, Doctor Strange, where he's just a 3D surgeon, da 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 da, and then he goes to Tibet or wherever it is, and he starts working on his chakras with the masters, and then he's able to, sit in the Himalayas in the freezing cold because he's become the atmosphere that he is around. So it's like, I know this sounds crazy, but we are moving to a space where superheroes exist. And we can call it superheroes, or we can just call it an avatar embodied soul, or we can call it an ascended master soul, or we can call it, a Buddhist monk. It is someone who is able to understand that everything is one, and that if you harness that energy through understanding what you're feeling, through the charge that you are receiving, you can transmute it, you can amplify it, you can magnify it, you can ground it, you can elevate it. We really are masters of energy. And that's, I am an energy worker. I am also a medicine woman. I do many things, but ultimately I am energy. And this is why this course is so powerful, because it's exciting to work on creation mechanics and finally bring through something that breaks things down into the feeling body, because this is also important. We have many spiritual modalities that kind of bring you out of the body. And I don't think we've spoken much about psychedelics actually yet. But anyway, we have many modalities, and even though I am a server of psychedelic medicine, it's more that many spiritual practices can bring you out of the body, where it's like we're looking for the embodied sensory feeling. So we asked about somatic. This is the somatic thing. What is happening in your body? So we're not imagining things. We're actually feeling it. We're feeling the mastery. We're feeling the vibrations through the body. So if I say, hey, can you feel the heat coming off of my hands? I'm sure you've all had a massage from someone who is disconnected, and you can feel that they are disconnected. They're not in their body. So they're just moving through the motions like kind of a robotic. And then you've got a healer that's like moving the energy through their body, and you're working the energy. And this is what's so great. It's like, through the course, not only will you have the meditations and activations where you will feel, it'll be shifting energy, it'll be activating the DNA, which is going to bring up emotions, which may trigger you, which if you sit with that and work through the course, through the full 7 months, you're going to discharge that energy. And what happens when we discharge? We move in vibration and oscillation to a kind of next layer of dimensional experience. And what happens then is we open up our perception. We start seeing the world in a different way. And the support system that this co-created container is that once you are uncovering and perceiving things in a different way, that which you perceive may begin to highlight more shadow aspects. So that trigger events topic we discussed. But while we're uncovering that, you are in the 7-month container being supported, right? You're being supported through this transformation because it is all energetically moving through you. And you may come to a space of resistance, because the other sort of marketing blurb that I used here was, this is a quantum embodiment training container and shadow integration container. Because I know that the frequency that I bring, whether you understand quantum or not, is going to shift something inside of you, which is going to activate something that needs to purge, to purify, which is or has the potential to move you into shadow. And I'm going to hold you through that because I know what it feels like. I have been there. And not only have I been there on a personal level, but also on a more cosmic and galactic space where I'm viewing timeline chunks of information and really transmuting this. Before you go on, because I wanted to just touch base on the water aspect. So the water aspect is so important because what does the water represent is the feminine. And what is the structure that is currently being challenged? The patriarchal masculine structure. And why is it being challenged? Because there has, and so we spoke about the freedom teachings, the Melchizedek Cloister Emerald Order. We spoke about this information being hidden. What information has been hidden? Let's simplify it and say that there is the feminine aspect of creation that the patriarchy has ignored energetically for eons. And this aspect, that water, that feminine, the flow is coming back in. So there is a big aspect around this feminine mother god, mother aspect of creation that we also bring in. So I hope by this point you can understand that we are working with philosophies, we're working with ancient history, we are having discussions about hidden aspects of our galactic history within the solar system. We are, through those discussions, activating the DNA. We are, through those discussions, then bringing in the embodiment of the discussion through the meditations and the activations. And again, most spiritual work is like this. The mind is going to try to figure out, what is going on here? But your higher aspect is going, oh, yes, amazing. We're doing the work. We're doing this work. And so this is why I wanted to create a 7-month container, because it is a lot of work. It is a lot of work. It's new information. Well, it's actually ancient information, so it's really, really old, but it's new to many souls, and it's going to take time to integrate. And that's why this container is a shadow integration container as well.
So you use the word integration quite a lot, and I've come across that in some of my studies as well. And one of my favorite spiritual books is The Presence Process by Michael Brown. And he talks about things that irritate you are signs of blocked emotion. So if somebody says something and you get irritated, that's actually an indication of some sort of blockage or emotional charge or something. And then he speaks a lot about integration. You need to integrate that charged emotion back into your being. And you've spoken about that a lot, but maybe you can explain that a bit better for the layman.
Beautiful. Well, so I'll try my best. Integration is really just, I think it's a process of not running away. So when you have this charge, which you will have in my container, the charge may just be fatigue. Okay. Let's say the charge is fatigue. And you need to integrate. What is it asking of you? It's asking for you to rest, right? What do most people do? They say, no, I can't rest because I need to produce. So we're bypassing that charge and we're ignoring it. And therefore, we're not allowing ourselves to integrate that which is present, which is fatigue. So I think that's a nice layman's way of speaking to this.
Does it mean like you're absorbing that charge? So you're sitting and absorbing it and let it become one with the rest of you?
So it's really interesting when I answer questions because I'm observing everything from the aspect of one. And so everything is happening. So you are, let's say you're not absorbing the charge. We're there to discharge the charge, right? So whatever is bringing you fatigue requires rest in order to discharge it. So we're discharging it. But you spoke about absorption. There is absorption through the process of integration. And what is it that we're absorbing? Perhaps the word absorption comes in the framework of, I'm absorbing a concept right now. I'm absorbing a teaching right now because I'm in recognition that my defense mechanism has come up, my coping mechanism has come up, and I want to run away. But I'm absorbing that, wow, this is something I need to look at. And so there may be a mental absorption of why this trigger has occurred, you know? And so this is the space that I'm holding for you. So we have the sessions, but between the sessions, I can feel if you're going through a deep shadow aspect. And that's also where the support comes in of going, you know, I can feel when people are pulling away because there is something that's been charged or something that needs to discharge. And that's where the support comes in of like, hey, you don't need to feel guilt about this. You don't need to feel shame about it. Because again, what are shadows? They are deeply conflicting aspects of truth that we are struggling to discharge and understand. It's hard. Some shadow work, or actually all shadow work, is difficult. It's difficult. So, you know, the container is not only shadow work, it's light, it's casting light on that which needs to rise and integrate as shadow, right? So within the one, we've got light and dark, and it's just dancing this tango through the entire course. And my job is to observe where everybody is at as the collective container, because it's an online global global group of people, to see where you are and to create the course content each session based on where everybody is at.
So I wanted to go into the law of one, which you've mentioned a few times during our talk today. And my understanding, I mean, if you do spiritual work, you'll hear and read about, you know, everything is one, we are all one, we are all connected. And it's very difficult to understand when you're sitting in this three-dimensional physical body to say, I'm the same as the tree outside, or I'm the same as the earth. But what does it actually mean when we're saying we are all one? How does that translate into something to understand?
I mean, whether you understand it or not is, I cannot judge that, but all that I can say is it's a unified field. It's a unified field. So we spoke to that string theory, right? Everything is connected. It's a unified field. So if you look at a cell under a microscope, you're going to see all of these, you know, tributaries and, you know, like the roots of a tree. It's all connected, and then it's just all connected. It's a unified field. I don't know. I can't go into more simplicity or complexity around that. What is the one? One is a unified field. What is a unified field is you know, a harmonious, balanced field of energy that everybody is connected to. And the further we move into our ascension or ascension practices, the more you are in understanding of that, because your perception changes. So your consciousness is expanding, and inevitably you are tapping into further aspects of the collective. And this is why this container is created for the starseed, the empath, the intuit, the highly sensitive soul, the soul that is on the spiritual path, because you are responding through a set of consequences and cause and effect from the unified field, you know, and you may not be able to identify it. We're so let's say that in the unified field now, if I were to ask you, what is a big frequency that you are feeling?
Right now, I'm feeling very calm and open. I don't know if that's a frequency.
No, in the collective field. So if you were to say, I'm feeling because you've just had elections in South Africa. So let's say what was the feeling pre-elections in the collective field, and what was the feeling afterwards. It's the same as that feeling that we get on a Sunday night, right? This doesn't happen to me anymore because I'm not linked into time, but that Sunday night feeling is you tapping into the collective field of this doomsday Monday work starts, da 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 da. That is the unified field. A mother and a child being intuitive about, their child being in danger or something's wrong, or sisters or twins, that is a unified field. We're tapping into a larger and larger network of data, information, quantum. And how do we handle that? It's a lot of data. It's a lot of information. So a lot of the aspects around this course is also sense making. Why am I feeling what I'm feeling? Well, my beloved, it is because you are connected. There is a big dominant frequency of war and obliteration. There is a big dominant frequency of antichrist, death culture. There is a big dominant frequency of agendas. So if we're a highly sensitive soul, we are empathic, we are multidimensionally activated, but we don't know it, or we haven't sensed make it, so we don't understand it. We don't know how to discharge that energy and come into energy mastery. Because once you understand that it is all one system, it is a unified field, therefore you are it. You are the God, and this is where God's sovereign free comes in. You are the God in this. You are the creator, because once you understand that, you can begin to understand how to create in your reality and come into energy mastery. Because the new currency is energy. It's not monetary, it's energetic. Like I said, I gave this highlight around, we have superhero powers. If we watch the last airbender or something like that, like moving water and air and da, 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 that is tapped into the universal field, and we're correcting that which we are tapping into. Because remember, within the one, we have inorganic constructs as well. We have artificial intelligence, inorganic artificial intelligence. So we don't really want to work with that. Within the law of one, we acknowledge that it exists, but it's not what we want to work with, because we want to work with Christic energy. We want to work with the energy of Christ consciousness, not as Christ as the man, but dragon energy. This is gestalts of consciousness from pre-matter fields, sound fields, so sound fields, frequency again, down stepping into the body and feeling that. And how do we become the Christ? How do we become the Christ? So we can speak to Christ as, again, like the same as God, technology, code, etc., etc. But what we need to do is activate the DNA, which, like I said, is going to bring you into spaces of shadow. Because in order to be the Christ, let's say, simply put, in a human context, the Christ was a man who was kind. He was a healer. He used to fast. He had access to his quanta, so universal information, and he walked around teaching. Now, he was a teacher, right? But a multidimensionally activated teacher, so not separate from myself. So if I can embody that Christic energy and share that Christic frequency with everybody in the group, that's what I'm doing. The point I'm trying to make is if you angered Christ, would he get triggered? No, because he's already transmuted all of that. So this is what we talk about, the Christ energy, and it's why someone might say, oh, your container might be has been challenging for me, and it's because in order to become the Christ, you've got to deal with the shadow aspects, so your triggers and everything. So it really is a fully encompassed training program, which is why we need 7 months, because there are so many aspects within the one: the light, the dark, the good, the bad, the mother, the father, within the trinity of the one.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you a tricky question now, and this is not to trick you at all, because you mentioned Christ, and obviously Christianity is a big religion on the planet, but there's a story in the Bible, and I know there's conspiracies of lots of things being left out, and the Bible being rewritten and remixed and all of that. But putting that aside, there's a story in the Bible where Jesus goes to the temple and he sees these traders trading at the temple like a marketplace, and he goes and topples the tables. And in the Bible, they explain that he was angry and he like kicked these people out. He's like, "What are you doing in my father's house?" Treating it like a general marketplace. And for me, I always thought, okay, so there's correct times to be angry. I mean, it's not wrong to be angry. There's an appropriate time to be angry. If somebody wrongs you, or in this particular case, people were disrespecting the church or the temple, then it's correct to be angry at that time. Am I understanding that correct, or is a Christ conscious person never get angry?
No, of course there is sacred anger. You cannot not move through anger while we move through what we are moving through within the unified field. Because part of grief, the layers of grief is anger. Anger if you're moving through grief, you're going to have to move through the frequency of anger. And this is where the sense making comes in. Most people don't understand why they're angry. They don't understand where it's coming from, because in their direct reality, nothing, but in the collective field, what do we have to grieve is genocide. We're grieving genocide over and over again. We're grieving the fact that these timelines are being repeated over and over and over again. Does that bring up sacred rage and anger? Yes. And I think it's so interesting that you mention this, because I think this is mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita as well. If someone is going to come in and, attack your family, you have the right to self-determine, and you have the right to defend, So this is where the attitudes of responsibility come in, and the attitudes of mastery, and the values of mastery. And that's what it means to be Christic. It doesn't mean that you are holier than thou, you're some sort of guru. It means at the base level, and this is where the embodying human, so it's like quantum training, embodying human, is I don't want you to ever feel like you can't have these emotions, because they need to come through. So it doesn't mean you are unholy, and it doesn't mean, in fact, if you block that, it's a bypass, And what does anger turn into? Rage. And what does rage turn into? Potential, sociopathic destruction, shooting schools down and things like that. So, and this is boundaries as well, it's boundaries. It's like, if you have a child, can you never get angry with that child? Of course you can get angry with the child. It's going to happen. But how you deal with it is important. So him doing that, maybe he evaluated that these are people. I'm talking about your story reference. Maybe he evaluated that these are adults that should know better, and he showed a little bit of a strong boundary marker by pushing the tables over. I'm not saying with children you're going to do the same thing, but are we going to get angry on this planet? Yes, we're human beings. So I never want, this is the beauty of this container as well. I don't want to bypass our human experience, because, gosh, we are here in physicality perceiving separation, although it is not that. But I embrace that, and I understand that, and I understand how difficult it is to think on a quantum level when perhaps you are engaging your consciousness in more dense matter. However, this is a beautiful opportunity to begin that quest of understanding the unified field, because it's only going to expand more and more and more and more. And as per one of the other sessions that we had, it's time. It's time to do it. And again, there's no push, because those that are in a resonant field will join this container. And that's just that.
So back to the unified field, because I have come across this in my studies as well. They speak of this field, it's like a canvas upon which all other layers of the universe have been built. And this field goes everywhere. And that's why we're sort of all connected. And that's the explanation of us all being connected. So if I, for example, go and steal from person X, because we're connected, I'm actually stealing from myself, and we perceive that it's separate, like, oh, I've taken that person's money, or I hoodwinked that person, or scammed that person. But because we're all connected, scamming someone else is actually scamming myself. Is that true? Okay, so that's what the connection is.
Correct. And this is where karma, or the concept of karma, comes in, right? Is that the universe is always trying to harmonize, right? It's always trying to come into balance. So one movement and one action made is going to create a ripple effect within the field, the unified field. And from a soul perspective and a soul contract perspective, the pattern is going to try balance itself out. So you might get robbed at one point in time, so that you can feel how it feels, because you did rob yourself. And so this is the beauty of creation mechanics and understanding the patterns of the universe, is that once you see it and understand it, you can, to a certain level, begin to predict it and become your own creator within it. And this is true empowerment. This is sovereignty, right? This is sovereignty. And this is the first time we've mentioned the word in this recording, but a lot of my teachings within the container are around the sovereign's law as well, because we have sovereign's law within its 3D contract or 3D context, speaking to the law common to I, so common law, the laws of mankind. But within the container, we are moving to understanding spiritual sovereignty. So becoming the God, becoming the creator, but also being humble enough to know that within that which we perceive as separation, we are just one tiny little aspect of consciousness, a fragment of God consciousness. But together, we are a unified field, and we are that inevitably. But if you begin to work with that equation in cohesion, can you imagine what we can create?
Wow. So you say this course is 7 months. It's open to everyone, but I'm sure not most people would understand this, and that's why you mentioned it's the resonance. People who resonate with the words and the teachings will be attracted to it, just like a magnet.
If you are experiencing disconnect, anxiety, depression, curiosity, if you have begun to question what's going on here, what's going on with me, if you are intrigued by ancient philosophies, civilizations, and teachings, if you are a practitioner, let's say Reiki, or you're into this kind of stuff, all of those people have opportunity to join. And in fact, I've even put I've quite specifically put the marketing as teenagers from 16 upwards may also join, because my perception, based on linking into the field, the quantum reality, is that our children really need support right now, or the teenagers really need support right now. And there are a lot of starseeds. So this is also a term that your DNA may recognize, right? Your soul may recognize starseeds. It's an inquiring mind. If you are in a space of inquiry within your evolution, your emotional body, your psyche, and creation, then this is a space for you.
Okay. And you're saying it's like an online global type of container, for lack of a better word. So how's it going to work? Are you going to do like an online session every week or every 2 weeks?
So it's a 7 month container where we do bi-monthly sessions, meaning there'll be 2 sessions a month, which total 14 sessions. I'm actually working with the coding of the DNA, which is 144. So it's like a decreasing. So there's one total price, but essentially how that price has come up, just to give you insight in how I anchor the container, is that I've worked with the code 144 and I've made it a decreasing sliding scale, like a rotational decreasing scale over the 7 months. This is not important, it's just interesting. So it was 144 month 1, 133 month 2, 122, 111, 122, 133, 144. And that makes our 7 months. And on the discounts, so anyone that joined Azurite Temple 2023 gets a 50% discount. All the numbers add up to 9. So it's like just working with, when some people are really into patterns and things. So this is a pattern that I saw within the creation of this, and I'd like to stick to it. So essentially, the total amount is 909. And yeah, those people that joined last year's session have a 50% discount. Those people that will be joining me or get the coupon code in at Burning Mountain in Switzerland will also get a little bit of a discount. And then there's several different ways you can pay. You can either do a once-off payment, split the payment in 2, split the payment in 4, or do monthly payments. So, when I say this course is for everyone who has an inquiring mind, I'm also saying there are several ways that you can handle the exchange around this as well. I want to, because this is the feminine energy. So I'm not saying, hey, this is the price you have to pay straight up front. I'm going, hey, you may be able to pay the price up front, or you may need to pay it monthly, and that's okay. But whatever we do, according to the attributes and attitudes of responsibility and mastery, whatever we agree on, we hold sacred. So this is an online retreat. As I've said, the other words used are an online coaching container. It is a retreat. So when we use the word retreat, what frequency do we have around that? We have the frequency of something sacred, something spiritual. It is a very, very sacred space. It is a very, very, very sacred space that we create, even though there are conversations and teachings. But this is a sacred container. Why? Because that's how I wish to function in this world, and that's my job as a medicine woman. I create ceremony. So it's like a 7-month ceremony, So it'll be bi-monthly, 2 sessions a month for 7 months, total 14 sessions. Everybody has access to all of the recordings in a shared folder. So you can re-listen to the activations and meditations or the teachings several times. And if you are in a different time zone to the majority of people, those in Australia, Bangkok, Thailand, etc., they may need to link in and watch the replays on their own. What other sort of structural information? We will be working with the platform Zoom. I tried to use something else, but Zoom is just accessible to all. It works functionally and it's easy for me. And the sessions are about 3 to 3.5 hours each. Again, it depends on the group size. It depends on, what we're dealing with, what we're doing on that day. But essentially, in total, you should receive at least 50 hours of coaching. So when you break down that into an hourly rate, what you're receiving from an experienced facilitator is really, really affordable. And I just have to mention this because yesterday I had a little call with someone. It was a consultation call, and he pitched his product to me, and the price that got flung out to me was absolutely I mean, it's beautiful. It's a pricing placement, but it was like close to $5,000 for an 8-week course, right? And although that course is a powerful course, it's not what I needed. But what I'm trying to share here is I'm a system breaker. I am a, I'm a rebel. I'm asking you to think in a different way. I'm bringing back in this feminine energy. We're anchoring in these frequencies. We're connecting the dots with regards to universal energy, universal laws, quantum physics. We're connecting the dots and we're reclaiming our sovereignty through activating the DNA so that you can remember who you are as an avatar God body, as God. So in terms of affordability, I think this is hugely accessible. I am open to discussion around what works for you financially, as in your payment scheme. And there are also 3 sponsored spots, which at this point there's 2 left. And I will evaluate that because obviously the sponsored spots, yes, everybody has their stories of trauma, but essentially it's coming down to finances, and many people are struggling financially. So I'm very clear on these boundaries. I do want to mention that, again, if you are really being called, speak to me. Speak to me if you have any issues. Because within the one, all are welcome, right? But we have to understand that there are boundaries and structures that we create to honor each other so that I don't sit in resentment. I don't sit in a depleted energy, giving of myself when I'm not being nourished. So, because this is energy mastery, I said the equation is always trying to balance itself out. So please do feel free to contact me. I don't want anyone excluded, but in my capacity as honoring the human, I can only do so much. Yes, I'm able to anchor high level of frequencies, but over a 7-month period, there has to be give and take for anyone that is coming on a spot as a sponsored spot.
So a couple more questions on the structure. Is there a limited number of spots for people to attend? You mentioned obviously the sponsored spots are limited, but for anyone else, is there a limit or not?
No, I know with my work that it is a very, the energy signature that I put out is very specific and often sometimes intimidating. So I'm just trusting in the natural flow of things. So at this point, there is no limitation. Also, because me as identity in this human body, I don't have a big I don't have a big network. I mean, it's not bad, but yeah, I'm just trusting. This is really about trusting the God body and anchoring my avatar God body, and trusting those who need to be there will be there, and trusting the amount of people that come to be in absolute divinity, because I'm working with creation mechanics. So I'm not in distrust of that which comes.
Okay, and you mentioned each session is between 3 to 4 hours, and that can be quite a commitment, for people working and having families and all these other responsibilities. So luckily, you are going to make all the recordings available. But is it possible for people to just join 1 hour if that's all they have available and then leave that particular session? Or if you join a session, should you sit through the whole session?
So once you've signed up to the container, what is expected is for you to commit to that container. If you leave the container halfway through or whatever, this is a non-refundable space, because I've anchored a big energy in, and this is, I need to work with certain structural laws as well. So that's the first thing. You are welcome to leave. You have the right to self-determine. You are sovereign. but it is a non-refundable spot. And whatever the financial commitment that we have committed to will be honored, because again, these are the attitudes of mastery. It's absolute accountability and absolute responsibility. And then we speak to having right relationship to self and right relationship to God, right? So to speak to that person who may be tired or have family or commitments, you are able to be fluid on the calls as long as it is in right relationship to self and right relationship to God. You may sit on a call and sleep the entire call. For example's sake, you're in our container, your higher aspects are receiving, right? So I may hold the space for you because you are honoring the fact that your body needs to rest, but your spirit wants to participate. Your spirit wants to show commitment. Your spirit wants to show attendance, but your body needs rest. So you are able to sleep while being on our call because everything is frequency. So you are receiving regardless. You may need to rewatch that particular session, to really cognitively receive those teachings. But it may be a session where we're doing meditation. And again, you may drift off into meditation because, and the reason we have this fluidity is for you to understand, first of all, I don't want anyone in FOMO. It's not a frequency that is necessary. There's no need for FOMO. You have the replays, join, be accountable, be responsible. What does commitment look like to you? When in your reality does it piss you off that when people disappoint you through non-committal action, or saying they're going to do things and they don't do these things? It's just a reflection on you. I'm able to hold the space. So it's like me being a mother and father, neutrality, and holding the space for you to do what you need to do, but in the attitudes of mastery and in Christ consciousness values. From there, there's a lot of leeway with regards to how you attend, how you show up. If you only show up, for 2 sessions and you watch the rest replay, but your soul knows, I'm doing the replays, It's your commitment, it's your money, it's your investment, it's your spiritual journey, it's you and me, So the first session, the first 2 sessions are very, very powerful because we go through the code of ethics. So there is a strict code of ethics that is highlighted. This is not an indoctrination. It is a code of ethics that you either agree to or not. And this code of ethics is our law of structure. And when things get tricky from a facilitation point of view, I can guide you back to that which you have aligned to and consented to. And then the responsibility lies within you. I don't need to deal with the emotional charge of, let's say we have 40 people online. It would be ridiculous of me to deal with the emotional charge of 40 different people. But the code of ethics provides a structure for us to work very cleanly and efficiently through the 7-month process.
I can see you've taken great effort and a lot of galactic downloads to create this course. This is not it's not something that you just sucked out of your thumb in a day or two. This has taken deep thought, a lot of practice. And you said you've done this last year already, so this would be the second time.
Yeah, it's beautiful to do it the second time round, and it's just so powerful, and the other thing is 7 months to some people may be like, oh my gosh, that's a long time. Let me tell you, if you haven't already experienced this for yourself, but we're experiencing time in a different way. It goes so fast, so fast, and the connections you make. So, beyond all the spiritual talk, the connections and the community feeling, sense of community that you have, where you're like, my brothers and sisters, this is what this is the unified field. It's that community. And yes, it's a decade of creation, in essence. Because as I mentioned in one of our other podcasts, ascension mechanics has always been my true north. It's what got it. I served the medicine, but it was the medicine is teaching you about that unified field. Now, how do we embody the unified field? And now a decade later, I'm able to present this material as somewhat of an elder, in my field and line of work as a guardian on this planet.
Brigitte, I think people who want to awaken spiritually or are on the spiritual journey, I'm sure would really, really benefit from this course. So guys watching the video, all the details are below the video. Check it out. Go to Brigitte's links. This is probably one of the best things you can do for your spiritual self if you are going on this sort of awakening path. It sounds extremely powerful. I'm very excited to be also partaking and learning. And yeah, I think I'm going to be learning a lot. And I've been studying spiritual books for a long time, but stuff that you're talking about is like way beyond my current knowledge. I'm very, very excited. And I think anyone who wants to awaken, who's curious, who's a star seed, who wants to take control of their lives, this is something you definitely don't want to miss out on.
And again, those of you that may not have understood everything that I'm saying, but are drawn to this, follow that feeling. Because I want to share with you again is a lot of the things that we do in the container is exercises where I get you to feel the energy. So you're not only receiving, like in traditional sense, you're receiving from someone, you're going to Reiki, you're receiving, but you're not feeling it for yourself. So it's really like, I love to teach, and I want you to feel it. So it's a beautiful co-creation. I'm excited. I actually launched the marketing this weekend, and we start in 2 months' time. So in August the 4th is our start date. And you mentioned family structures and things like that. I do mostly do the sessions in the evening, but try to bounce between a weeknight or a weekend night or possibly weekend morning. So I'm just kind of moving with the flow with regards to where the group is at. And the other thing I wanted to mention is, the groups that I'm a part of, because we understand the unified field, we understand that all of us showing up are a group shield at that point in time that are anchoring a frequency. And sometimes the things that I attend are, US times, meaning we start at 11:30 p.m. and we end at 6 in the morning, because the groups are so quantum, and we're not even giving times to sessions anymore, because we're channeling God frequency, meaning a session may be 2 hours, it may be 4 hours, it may be 6 hours. So I'm just sharing in terms of how I work. When I go onto these calls, we drop time, because one of the things in spirituality you'll always hear about is time doesn't exist. So we drop time, we are present, we are a group shield in this moment, and we have shown up, because the Azurite Temple is not different. We come into a group shield, we activate, we bring in our pillars of light, your individualized sovereign pillars of light, and we charge that up, and we shine this beautiful light onto the planetary grid at any one point in time. So I've spoken to interpersonal processes, but from a planetary perspective, do you know what this field does? That's the exciting part of Azurite Temple. That's the light workers. Yes, we may be moving through some shadow integration aspects, but the shield that we are creating as a unified field of The Azurites is powerful, 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 powerful. You have the potential to create new timelines, new worlds, new realities, much like the potential to change an entire dam frequency of water, you know. So feel the call. That's it. It's feeling, feeling. Don't worry about understanding. Feel it. Feel it. Feel my essence. Forget about the mind, the terminology, and all of that.
I agree. So once you get to your feelings, you get closer to your soul, because emotions are a much higher frequency, I guess, than your mental thoughts. So higher in frequency, closer to your soul, closer to your higher self. So follow your feelings, and and hopefully they will guide you to this coaching container, which I think can be a complete life changer for this life and future lives. So, Brigitte, thank you so much. This was a brilliant talk. I really, really appreciate it, especially for my understanding. And I hope people who have watched this video will gravitate to this beautiful teaching and facilitation.
I'd just like to mention the links below. I think I'm going to use a Facebook link, because within that event container, even if you are still have questions around it, I'm slowly going to post little pieces of information. So just bite-sized chunks, so that you can be like, oh, and through the next 6 weeks or so that we have left, or 7 weeks before we begin, you can slowly begin to see, this is happening, this is happening. So it's in bite-sized chunks for you to understand and to begin to feel the frequency of the event. So please do check out the Facebook event link. And also, I'm very, very happy to speak to people for a 15-minute consult, should you need it, although here is an hour and a half session. But should you need to go through anything personal, I am here. So, yeah, thank you, Deepak, for having me on again and allowing me to speak about this beautiful multidimensional container.
Thank you, Brigitte. And we continue next week with the follow up of our podcast series. But this was a really important one to explain the course that's being offered and the benefit of the course and what it can do for your life. So till then, guys, adios.